What if the America British visitors were warned about is nothing like the America they actually find? What happens when bigger homes feel more comfortable? Salaries suddenly look more ambitious, strangers seem warmer, and everyday convenience becomes dangerously easy to love? 7 ordinary differences are about to expose a much bigger truth. Sometimes the things Americans get mocked for are exactly the things visitors miss most once they leave. America keeps its cool. Before the first goal of the 2026 World Cup was even scored, America had already delivered one of its strangest culture shocks, and it happened the moment visitors walked through an automatic door. Outside, a Texas afternoon could make a parking lot feel like a cast iron skillet left on the stove. Inside, the temperature suddenly dropped to the point where a British visitor could reasonably wonder whether Walmart had accidentally relocated part of Alaska next to the cereal aisle.
Not even in the building. We're still about 10 feet from entering the building, and I can feel the air conditioning. Welcome to the United States of America.
What's going on, everyone? It's Carl, your Brit in Chicago, and something I'm super grateful for in the summertime is air conditioning. Excuse me, in the UK, typically no households have aircon, and I know in the summers growing up, if it was hot, it was crack a window and let more hot air in, buy a paddling pool, or eat a bunch of ice cream or ice pole to kind of cool yourself down. So those were the options. Now, being out here, if I get hot, fan, or I can put the aircon on, and it is such a nice feature to have. I don't know why more places in the UK don't have it.
To all the Europeans who are dying of heat right now, I want to show you guys something really cool that Americans have. Look at this.
That contrast says far more about America than a thermostat ever should. Much of the overseas coverage people encounter tends to focus on American politics, crime, healthcare, or every national argument loud enough to cross the Atlantic. Then millions of international football fans arrive for a tournament spread across North America with 11 US. Host cities ranging from Miami and Houston to Seattle and New York, New Jersey, and everyday America offered a very different first impression. Summer here can be brutal, but Americans have spent decades building daily life around the idea that heat should be managed rather than politely endured. The numbers make the difference almost comically clear. According to the USDA, Energy Information Administration's Residential Energy Consumption Survey, about 88% of American households used air conditioning in 2020. In Britain, residential air conditioning remains rare, with estimates commonly placing household adoption below 5%. That gap is enormous, yet the reason becomes obvious when you compare places like Dallas with London. A typical midsummer day in North Texas can climb into the mid to upper 90s Fahrenheit, while London's average summer highs are usually much milder. British homes were largely shaped by a climate where keeping warmth inside made sense. Many American homes, especially across the South and Sun Belt, evolved around the opposite problem. Central air became part of the basic machinery of everyday life, sitting alongside plumbing and electricity with almost no ceremony. Americans do not generally treat a 95-degree afternoon as a philosophical challenge. They close the door, turn the system on, and continue living. That practicality becomes especially noticeable in public spaces. Airports, stadium concourses, hotels, restaurants, shopping malls, supermarkets, ride shares, and office buildings are usually designed with cooling in mind. Someone can spend 20 minutes outside in Houston feeling like a rotisserie chicken with a passport, then step into a restaurant and immediately start wondering whether they should have packed a hoodie. There's plenty to admire about Britain's older architecture and milder weather traditions, and American air conditioning can absolutely become excessive. Still, during a summer event as enormous as the 2026 World Cup, the American approach reveals something visitors rarely see in dramatic headlines. This country is exceptionally good at turning comfort into infrastructure. After several days of sleeping in a properly cooled room, walking through chilled stores, and escaping the afternoon heat with the push of a button, the joke changes. America stops looking excessive and starts looking prepared. For people arriving with one picture of the country in their heads, that can be the first small reason leaving becomes harder than expected. Room to breathe. There's a particular moment in America when the word house quietly changes meaning. A front door opens, and instead of stepping directly into a compact hallway, where coats, shoes, stairs, and 3 generations of furniture appear to be negotiating a ceasefire, there is suddenly space around everything. The sofa has room to breathe. The dining table is not performing a second job as an office. Even the laundry basket seems to have its own zip code. For many Europeans arriving in the United States during the World Cup, this may be one of the most seductive differences because it has nothing to do with landmarks or tourist attractions. It is simply the amount of everyday room Americans consider normal.
As someone who grew up in Europe, especially in Germany, there's something so cool about American suburbs, and I don't think Americans are realizing that. For me, this really feels like I'm walking through a movie set. And I know that doesn't make sense for a lot of people who grew up here, but I get so excited every time I see a yellow school bus, or like these long drives away with the basketball hubs, or even like these random sidewalks as I'm walking here right now. So please tell me I'm not the only one.
The OECD's Better Life data has long placed the United States among the countries with the most living space per person at roughly 2.4 rooms per resident. Britain sits lower at around 2 rooms per person. That difference sounds modest until it is translated into daily life, because half a room on a spreadsheet can become an actual home office, a proper guest room, a larger kitchen, or enough storage to stop treating the hallway like a branch of IKEA. The contrast becomes easier to understand when London is placed beside metropolitan areas such as Dallas, Houston, or Atlanta. London grew through centuries of dense development with terraced homes, narrow plots, and neighborhoods built long before SUVs, walk-in closets, and 2-car garages entered anyone's imagination. Large parts of American suburbia were created much later, when cheap land and automobile travel allowed builders to spread outward rather than squeeze inward. That history created 2 very different definitions of comfort. In Britain, clever use of limited space became almost a national skill. Beds gain drawers, stairs hide cupboards, and a kitchen corner can perform more jobs than a small-town mayor. There is real charm and intelligence in that compactness. America simply took another route. Instead of asking how many functions could fit into one room, it often asked why the house could not have another room. That sounds like classic American excess until somebody lives with it. Extra space changes routines in ways that are surprisingly easy to become attached to. Groceries can be stored instead of constantly replenished. Guests can stay without the living room turning into temporary accommodation. Children can have room to play while adults still hear themselves think. Hobbies no longer need to be packed away every evening like contraband. Even clutter becomes less aggressive when it has somewhere legitimate to go. This is where the American version of bigger becomes more interesting than the stereotype. Overseas commentary often treats size as if Americans simply enjoy making everything enormous for sport, as though suburban developers were competing with Costco. In reality, space is deeply tied to how the country thinks about independence. A home is expected to absorb family life, work, storage, recreation, guests, and the occasional purchase that seemed much smaller under the warehouse lights. There are trade-offs, of course. Larger homes require more energy, suburban development can mean longer drives, and Britain's denser neighborhoods often provide something many American suburbs struggle to match: the ability to walk out the front door and reach shops, cafes, or a train station within minutes. Yet that does not erase the appeal of American space. It explains why it becomes so addictive. After spending several weeks with a proper laundry room, a garage, enough kitchen counter to prepare dinner without moving the toaster into another county, and a bedroom where the bed does not have diplomatic relations with every wall, compact living can suddenly feel much more compact than it did before. America rarely apologizes for giving daily life more room than absolutely necessary. During a summer when visitors arrive expecting to discover everything the headlines warn them about, many may instead discover something far more dangerous to their return ticket. They get used to having space, built to roam. A British football fan can look at a map of America and make one very innocent mistake, assuming that 2 cities sitting in the same state must be reasonably close together. Then somebody mentions that Dallas to Houston is roughly 240 miles, which is longer than the drive from London to Manchester, and suddenly the map starts looking less like a country and more like a continent wearing one flag. That difference in scale has shaped something Americans do exceptionally well: long-distance driving without turning the journey into an exhausting expedition.
Americans, there was one thing that really stood out to me and blew my mind when I was travelling your country. It might sound silly, but everywhere you go in the USA, the roads are so straight. In the UK, we're used to tight, winding, narrow roads. Obviously, I understand the infrastructure in our country was built a long time ago. But why is everything so straight? It seems to make a lot more sense. I'm not against it.
The United States interstate highway system stretches for roughly 49,000 miles, according to the Federal Highway Administration. Britain, by comparison, has around 2,300 miles of motorway. Britain is obviously a much smaller country, so the raw numbers are not a competition, but they reveal why driving feels so different once the road opens up in America. The American system was designed around moving enormous numbers of people and goods across enormous distances, and ordinary travelers benefit from that engineering every single day. This becomes especially noticeable during the 2026 World Cup, when international visitors may travel between host cities spread across a country where a nearby destination can still require several hours behind the wheel. Americans barely react to that idea because distance has trained the culture differently. A 3-hour drive can mean visiting relatives, attending a college football game, spending the weekend at a lake, or chasing barbecue that somebody swears is worth crossing half of Texas for. In Britain, long drives often involve denser traffic, narrower roads, frequent junctions, and older urban layouts that were never designed around modern car travel. Drive through parts of London, Bristol, or Edinburgh, and the road occasionally feels as though a medieval cartographer is still quietly making decisions from beyond the grave. America's highways usually offer a very different rhythm, with wide lanes, long sightlines, frequent exits, large service stations, and parking lots that rarely require the spatial awareness of a submarine captain. That comfort changes how people think about distance. Americans often treat the road itself as part of the experience, which helps explain why the road trip became such a recognizable piece of American culture. The car gets packed with drinks, snacks, luggage, playlists, and enough emergency supplies to survive an accidental detour through Nebraska. Nobody expects the journey to disappear, so the country has learned how to make the journey easier. Even the roadside economy reflects that habit. Large gas stations along major routes can combine fuel pumps, hot food, clean restrooms, enormous drink counters, convenience stores, and parking areas large enough for trucks, RVs, and families traveling across several states. Buc-ee's became famous partly because Americans somehow looked at the ordinary gas station and decided it needed the square footage of a small shopping center. That instinct can look excessive until somebody spends 6 hours on the road. Then the giant rest stop makes perfect sense. Britain has advantages that many American cities would happily borrow, especially excellent rail links between major urban centers and compact towns where driving is often unnecessary. America answers a different geographical problem, and it answers that problem remarkably well. When towns, mountains, beaches, national parks, and entire states sit hundreds of miles apart, mobility has to feel manageable rather than heroic. That is why visitors can become surprisingly attached to American driving. The highways create a sense that the country keeps unfolding ahead of you, with another exit, another town, and another landscape waiting beyond the windshield. After a few weeks, 4 hours in the car can stop sounding ridiculous. It starts sounding like Saturday, the paycheck surprise. One of the fastest ways to ruin a perfectly peaceful conversation between Britain and America is to put two salaries side by side. The job title can be identical, the responsibilities can sound almost interchangeable, and yet the American number sometimes lands on the table looking as though somebody accidentally added another digit. For visitors spending more time in the United States during the World Cup, that difference can become much harder to dismiss once conversations move beyond stadiums and sightseeing and into ordinary questions about jobs, rent, careers, and what people can actually afford. This is where the image of America seen from overseas can collide rather spectacularly with everyday economics. European coverage often emphasizes the cost of American healthcare, expensive universities, or the absence of the broader welfare systems, familiar in Britain. Those are legitimate differences, and Americans debate them constantly themselves. What receives far less attention is the other side of that equation. American workers in many professional and skilled occupations can earn considerably more money. OECD data makes the broader gap difficult to ignore. Its Better Life Index has reported household net adjusted disposable income per person at roughly $51,000 a year in the United States, compared with about $33,000 in the United Kingdom. These figures are adjusted for purchasing power, so this is not simply a trick caused by converting pounds into dollars. They are trying to measure how much income households actually have available after taxes and transfers. That difference becomes much more tangible when comparing major labor markets. London is one of the world's great financial and professional centers, yet salaries there frequently surprise Americans who assume a prestigious London job automatically comes with New York money. In sectors such as software engineering, finance, medicine, and specialized corporate work, compensation in New York, San Francisco, Boston, Dallas, or Seattle can climb considerably higher, especially once bonuses, equity, and employer benefits enter the picture. The cultural effect is fascinating because Americans are often teased for talking about money so openly. Salary negotiations, job hopping for better compensation, signing bonuses, stock options, and asking for a raise are treated much more naturally in many American workplaces. Britain tends to carry a little more social awkwardness around discussing personal income. In America, someone will occasionally explain their new compensation package before the appetizers have arrived, and somehow nobody calls the police. There's a deeper reason this feels so distinctly American. The labor culture places a strong premium on upward mobility. Changing employers every few years is not automatically viewed as disloyal. Sometimes it is simply considered smart career management. Workers are encouraged to price their skills against the market, and companies competing for talent often have to respond with money rather than warm words about being one big family. That attitude can be strangely addictive. A larger salary does not magically make every American expense disappear, and comparisons become much more complicated once healthcare, housing, childcare, taxes, and vacation time are included. Someone earning more in Manhattan may also discover that Manhattan is remarkably talented at taking the money back. Britain also provides public services and worker protections that cannot be measured by looking at a paycheck alone. Still, income matters because it changes the range of choices available to ordinary people. It can mean a larger home, faster savings, more money invested for retirement, an easier road trip across the country, or the ability to say yes to something without immediately opening a calculator. That is why this particular American advantage can sneak up on visitors. The surprise is not simply that some Americans earn more, it is how strongly the culture expects people to keep climbing. Ambition here is rarely asked to whisper politely in the corner. After hearing enough salaries, seeing what certain careers can pay, and realizing that negotiating your value is almost treated like another workplace skill, the old image of America as a place where everyone is simply struggling becomes much harder to maintain. For some visitors, the most dangerous souvenir from America may not fit inside a suitcase at all. It may be a completely new idea of what their work is worth. Open when you need it. Sunday afternoon can reveal more about two countries than 100 political debates ever could. In England, walk toward a large supermarket late enough, and the doors may already be preparing for retirement. In much of America, meanwhile, somebody is still buying laundry detergent, cold medicine, a phone charger, and a family-sized bag of Doritos under fluorescent lights at an hour when sensible people should probably be thinking about bed. That difference sounds trivial until life refuses to follow office hours. England and Wales still operate under the Sunday Trading Act 1994, which generally limits large shops over 280 square meters to 6 continuous hours of trading between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. Small shops are exempt and Scotland follows different rules, but the contrast with the United States remains striking. America has no nationwide Sunday rule imposing the same 6-hour limit on large retailers, although individual states and municipalities can still regulate particular businesses. The result is a culture where availability itself has become part of the product. That becomes especially noticeable during something as chaotic as the World Cup. A match ends late, thousands of visitors pour back into unfamiliar neighborhoods, somebody realizes the hotel room has no toothpaste, somebody else needs pain reliever, and another person discovers their phone cable has chosen that exact evening to join the afterlife. In many American cities, the answer is often remarkably simple. There's probably still somewhere open. This is where places such as Dallas, Houston, Miami, Los Angeles, and New York operate differently from what many British visitors are accustomed to around London or Manchester on a Sunday evening. American pharmacies frequently double as convenience stores. Supercenters combine groceries, household supplies, electronics, clothing, and medicine under one enormous roof. Gas stations can sell enough food and daily necessities to rescue a minor domestic emergency at midnight. The attraction is deeper than staying open late. American retail culture is built around removing the tiny negotiations that steal time from ordinary life. Forgot milk after dinner? Go get it. Landed after a delayed flight? Food is still possible. Need something before an early road trip? Somebody has probably already turned the lights on. America has spent decades treating inconvenience like a bug that should be patched rather than a character-building exercise. The joke practically writes itself because Americans can take this so far that a store occasionally feels less like a business and more like an emergency backup civilization. Walk into a major Walmart supercenter for one bottle of shampoo, and 15 minutes later you can be standing beside tires, fishing rods, frozen pizza, televisions, baby clothes, and enough cereal to survive a congressional filibuster. Yet the scale works because the philosophy underneath it is very simple. Ordinary people have unpredictable schedules. Britain's more limited opening hours can protect workers, preserve quieter Sundays, and fit naturally into communities where shops are closer together and daily routines develop differently. There's a genuine social value in a day that does not behave exactly like every other day of the week. America made another choice, and for visitors, that choice can become dangerously comfortable. Once someone gets used to knowing that a forgotten charger at 9:45 p.m. is an inconvenience rather than tomorrow's problem, expectations quietly change. Convenience stops feeling luxurious because it starts feeling normal. That may be one of America's least glamorous talents, yet it is also one of the easiest to miss until you leave. The country has built an enormous part of everyday life around a promise nobody bothers putting on a postcard. When you suddenly need something, America has a surprisingly good chance of still being awake. Game day goes huge. There's a wonderful American habit of taking an event that already works perfectly well and asking one dangerous question: what if we made the whole thing feel like the Super Bowl? That instinct explains why international football supporters arriving for the 2026 World Cup may discover that Americans do not simply build stadiums for watching games. They build entire ecosystems designed to make several hours around the game feel like an event worth remembering. The numbers reveal how serious America is about scale. Wembley Stadium in London, the symbolic home of English football, holds around 90,000 spectators. That is enormous by any reasonable standard, yet Michigan Stadium in Ann Arbor officially seats 107,601 people, while Beaver Stadium at Penn State has historically held more than 106,000. The remarkable part is that neither building belongs to an NFL franchise. These are university stadiums, meaning American college students regularly play in front of crowds larger than the capacity of one of Europe's most famous national stadiums. That tells you something unusually American about entertainment culture. The game matters enormously, but the country refuses to let the scoreboard carry the entire evening on its back. College football? Saturdays can begin hours before kickoff with tailgating, marching bands, alumni gatherings, food, school traditions, giant video boards, coordinated chants, and enough merchandise to make a small shopping mall nervous. Professional sports push the same philosophy even further through elaborate introductions, in-arena entertainment and technology designed to keep tens of thousands of people engaged during every natural pause. British football grew from a very different tradition. A Saturday afternoon at grounds such as Anfield Villa Park or St. James's Park carries generations of history, songs passed through families, and an atmosphere Americans genuinely admire. The crowd often creates the spectacle itself. American sports culture adds another layer by treating the venue as a production studio with hot dogs. Neither approach cancels the other, but the contrast becomes fascinating during a World Cup hosted partly in the United States. Several 2026 venues were originally designed primarily for American football. AT&T Stadium in Arlington normally seats around 80,000 and can expand beyond that for major events. MetLife Stadium in New Jersey, where the World Cup final is scheduled to be played, has a regular capacity above 82,000. Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta uses a massive circular video board that wraps around the inside of the roof like someone gave Times Square a season ticket. There's a reason this style becomes easy to love. American venues spend extraordinary effort reducing dead time. Before kickoff, there is something happening. During breaks, there is something happening. And after the final whistle, the surrounding district can still be full of restaurants, bars, screens, and people discussing what they just watched. The match remains the center of gravity, yet everything around it keeps the energy from disappearing. That ability reflects a broader American talent for turning participation into spectacle without demanding that everyone be an expert first. Someone can attend knowing every statistic, while the person beside them may simply enjoy the band, the food, and the noise. Both still feel included. Europe gave football much of its soul, and Britain remains one of the best places on earth to experience the raw tradition of the sport. America contributes something different during 2026. The confidence to put the same passion inside buildings engineered like entertainment machines. After seeing a crowd of 80,000 people treated as though every seat deserves its own show, the American approach starts making surprising sense. Sometimes bigger really is better when the entire point is making people remember where they were when the game began. America Says Hello put 50 strangers in a line outside a World Cup stadium in London, and the safest social rule is usually simple: respect the queue, respect personal space, and do not suddenly behave as though everyone has been invited to Thanksgiving. Put that same line outside a stadium in Dallas, Atlanta, or Kansas City, and within 10 minutes, somebody may know where the person behind them flew in from, which team they support, where they ate last night, and whether they have tried brisket yet. That difference sounds small, but it reveals one of America's most quietly addictive social habits. Americans are unusually comfortable turning strangers into temporary friends. British politeness is famous for being controlled and beautifully understated. In London, sharing an elevator with 6 people can feel like participating in a national competition to avoid unnecessary eye contact. Nobody's being unfriendly. Leaving people alone is often considered a form of good manners. American friendliness uses a different rule book. In many parts of the country, silence can feel less polite than offering a simple comment, question, compliment, or joke. The habit has real social weight behind it. According to AmeriCorps in US, Census Bureau data covering 2022 to 2023, about 75.7 million Americans, or 28.3% of people aged 16 and older, formally volunteered through an organization. Even more strikingly, more than 138 million people, around 54%, reported informally helping neighbors. Those numbers do not prove that every American is waiting beside the mailbox with cookies, but they do show how deeply the idea of participating in community life remains embedded in the culture. World Cup visitors can encounter that instinct everywhere because sporting events give Americans the perfect excuse to use it. A jersey becomes permission to start talking. A foreign accent becomes an invitation to ask where someone traveled from. Standing beside another fan for 5 minutes can somehow produce restaurant recommendations, parking advice, a weather warning, and directions delivered with the confidence of a man who personally designed the interstate. There is a reason this becomes so easy to enjoy. American friendliness usually asks very little in return. The cashier who says she likes your shirt is probably not beginning a lifelong relationship. The person chatting beside you in a stadium line may never appear in your life again. These tiny exchanges simply make public space feel warmer. America is a country where millions of people move between states for college, jobs, military service, marriage, or opportunity, so being able to enter a room without already knowing somebody has practical value. Conversation becomes social, WD-40. Compare that with London, where newcomers can enjoy one of the world's most diverse cities, while still discovering that friendships often develop more slowly. Neither style is wrong. British reserve protects privacy, while American openness lowers the cost of being new. And that second advantage becomes especially powerful during a tournament filled with people who are new to everything. Some visitors may arrive expecting the America they have absorbed through political arguments, crime stories, and angry television panels. Then an ordinary American helps them find the right train, recommends a taco place, asks about their team, and wishes them luck before walking away. Nothing dramatic has happened, yet the stereotype has already lost another small battle. After enough moments like that, American friendliness stops feeling strangely enthusiastic and starts feeling wonderfully efficient. The country has found a remarkably simple way to make enormous cities feel smaller. Somebody says hello first. Maybe the real surprise of America is how quickly the ordinary things become difficult to leave behind. The space, opportunity, convenience, warmth, and confidence of everyday life rarely make international headlines, yet they can completely change how a country feels once you experience them yourself. Which American advantage do you think visitors underestimate the most? Share your answer below and subscribe to the channel for more stories that reveal the America people rarely get to see from overseas.